and day out. And I thought for like a primary career path, I wasn't sure if I could do that, 40 hours a week. And at the same time, I felt like I was contributing with my team and this sort of like program management sort of stuff. And I thought like, okay, like I think that's a good combination of like the analytical side of things as well as this like, really strong mission component to it. And I thought like public policy school kind of fits those two things. It has this quantitative element to it, and it also has this, work of doing something for the public good. And so that led me to apply for grad schools in that area, and that is what I'm doing now.
Thanks, Pat. And I just realized that we had not gone live yet. So for all of those of you who have been able to now watch us live, we are watching the chat. So if you have any questions, please feel free to enter that. Once we finish, you should be able to go back and watch from the start. So I apologize, technology. So right now the volunteers are telling us, or former volunteers are telling us about how their work as Mercy volunteers led them to where they are now. So Melissa?
Yeah, so I was really fortunate that when I applied, even though I did apply to MVC late, that they still had a healthcare role available. And so I think one of the biggest things that I really learned during my year that has kind of shaped the kind of physician that I want to be is just the idea of patience and compassion. So even just answering phone calls when patients call, it takes a lot because patients call for a lot of different reasons. And a lot of the times they just want you to listen. And so I really learned that important skill of listening to not just patients, but anyone I really encounter on a day-to-day basis. And just making sure I really understand where people are coming from, because that's really the best way that I'm able to help people. But yeah, I really enjoyed that aspect. And I forgot to say, I'm not sure if people know this, but St. Francis Cabrini Clinic, it's a free clinic. It's for people who are uninsured. Some people with Medicaid are able to get treatment, but it really helps those who are less fortunate, who are really not able to get that same kind of care otherwise. And even the volunteers at the clinic are just giving their time, they're not paid. And so really everybody's just doing the best they can for that population.
Thanks, Melissa. Amanda?
I think, well, I know that serving at Project Home really solidified my desire to be a social worker. But part of that is because I was surrounded by so many social workers who are doing like just drastically different things. Like they were involved in every aspect of what I was doing, and they all came from different backgrounds and like had different passions. So it was like really refreshing or reassuring, I guess, to see that like it's okay, like that I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with my social work degree. There's like all these amazing options, and like no matter what I pick, I'm gonna have a career where I can serve people and like have a meaningful job. So it just made me confident in choosing to go to grad school, which I'm glad, because I was not confident before my year of service. So I really needed that to like know what I wanted to pursue next.
I love to hear all this. It's so wonderful. So thinking about those additional pieces of MVC that made you want to do this, what are some gifts and growth opportunities that happened for you all while living in community? Melissa, if you'd like to start.
Sure. So I was actually in a smaller community. It was me and my housemate. And so I think the biggest thing for us, so we knew that we came from different backgrounds, but we also use that as a point to find ways that we were similar in. So we found out that we're both more introverted. We were able to really click on that aspect and really respected each other's boundaries when it came to like a lot of like, oh, let's do this, let's do that. I mean, we were able to do a lot of things together, but we were still able to say and realize we do need time to just be on our own. And I think it just goes down, it comes down to just figuring out like the people who you live with, the people that you encounter every day, knowing what their personality is like, because that's really the best way to be able to communicate effectively with people, have meaningful conversations. We had conversations about, honestly, everything. We talked about, Detroit itself is a very diverse community, and we were able to be exposed to a lot of different backgrounds, different cultures. And so we're able to talk through the struggles that the city was facing, how to address those, even though if we couldn't do them personally, just kind of come up with ideas as to how to address them, maybe in our own day-to-day lives, because I know, and I'm sure a lot of people know, that even the smallest things can make a huge impact, whether it's just smiling at a person that you meet on the street, or just being intentional with the conversations that you have with other people. And so I think both of us used that year to get to know each other better, especially me coming from a Nigerian background. So getting her exposed to that kind of thing, and me even getting to meet her family when they came down to Detroit, and just learning how different people can be different, but also similar at the same time.
Very well said, Melissa. Amanda?
So I'm going to be completely honest. When I picked my year of service, community was probably the thing I thought about the least. And it ended up being the biggest blessing of the entire year. I was in a 3-person community, and the 3 of us were just so lucky. We got along really well. And I just think it's amazing. It was amazing to learn what it's like to come into a relationship where everyone is bringing their full self, with the expectation that they are going to be their full self and they're going to be accepted for that, and the reciprocity. I have never felt so supported and so understood as I did in my community. And it was amazing because the work that you do as a volunteer is pretty heavy, and it's so rewarding, but it can be pretty hard. And so having 2 women to come home to who just were there to listen, to support, to laugh, it was such a beautiful home to be a part of. And I just loved it so much. And with that being said, I think another blessing of community is you learn a lot of patience when you are living with people. Like Melissa was saying, coming from different backgrounds, it can be surprising, the tiniest things that can become this is a point of tension. Do we vacuum or do we sweep? So just silly things like that, learning oh, it's okay that we do things differently. We're all still able to live together. And yeah, I just feel I have such a better idea of just how to be a friend and a companion and just a person from living in community. And it's really beautiful.
Yeah, I love that. Lots of love and growth from community experiences. Pat?
Yeah, so I was also in a 3-person community, and it was kind of interesting that each of us had worked for a number of years after doing a year of service. And we came from 3 different regions of the country: East Coast, West Coast, and Midwest. And yeah, so just echo people's, comments about finding common ground amongst the differences. And I think one of the biggest things that I realized during my community experience was, I think coming in, I had like during the course of the year, I realized the expectations I had entering the community, and one of them was around the idea of oh yeah, we're gonna have this really tight bond, this emotional closeness, and have these deep conversations. And in my experience, it just didn't really happen that way. And I think what I learned instead is just the little daily acts of love and service that you can do for your community members. Amanda was talking about vacuuming and or things like that. And yeah, I would say just unloading the dishwasher, or communicating well around when we're gonna start eating dinner. I remember that being a significant thing. And so it just ended up being this I don't know, kind of laboratory of how do you love another person, and the kind of small daily, almost mundane things of daily life and sharing your house together. And I think also, at least for me, the community experience didn't really end when we left our year, but for me, just continuing to think about it and process it, and understand better, why did I react this way in this situation, or what what is this bringing up for me in my life post year of service that reminds me of my community? All those things are really fruitful.
How did each of you engage or grow in your spirituality, both personally and in sharing with your community, whether that's your volunteer community or the local community? Oh, Amanda, if you'd start.
I think one of the biggest ways was each of my community members came from like a similar background but different. So just being open to learning about how they practiced their faith was extremely influential to me. And we also got involved in the Philadelphia like community. So we would go to different churches together and like try different things. But I think honestly the biggest thing was just the conversations we would have around the dinner table about like our beliefs and why we believed what we believed, and just being willing to talk it out with each other and kind of explore, and not being afraid to ask each other questions, but just being willing to like sit in some of the discomfort and wondering.
Thanks, Amanda. Melissa?
Yes. So for our community, so we made it really important that we did have our spirituality night every week. For us, it was on Wednesdays. But at the beginning, so my community member and I were both raised in the same faith, both practicing the same faith. So in that sense, it made it a little easier, but we kind of challenged ourselves as the year progressed to kind of explore what spirituality means. And it doesn't just mean going to church every Sunday, but we started incorporating things like doing yoga or drawing our feelings, just things that just kind of engage our minds more and just kind of expose us to how different people do practice spirituality, and just accepting that and being comfortable exploring that with each other. And so, yeah, one of the spirituality nights I enjoyed was the yoga for sure. And then there was another one where we got chalk, and right outside our house, we just kind of started drawing how our day was. And that was really, that was good for us, because not only could we see like what was in our heads, but then we were able to explain it to each other, and just kind of exploring different aspects of spirituality and what that means for different people.
I love that chalk idea. I hadn't heard of that one before. Might try that too. Pat?
Yeah, I think sharing spirituality with my community was one of my favorite parts of the whole year. I just remember like we had so many, yeah, like Melissa was saying, great like distinct sort of spirituality nights. I think at the beginning of the year we did a couple like personality tests, and it was funny that each of the three people in my community had the same personality type. And but we did a lot of things like watch movies, did crafts. I think one of the most meaningful ones for me was one night we did an examen together, like just like reviewing our day. And it wasn't the norm that we did like a structured sort of prayer like that, but it was pretty powerful. And I think just on the theme of spirituality as a whole, I would also just add learning from the Sisters of Mercy. Our community was really special in that we had about 20 Sisters of Mercy living in the houses surrounding our community house, which was pretty unique. And yeah, just like asking them about their daily prayer life and their spirituality and how it's grown and how they think of it was just yeah, like an invaluable experience.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned the sisters. They're such a big part in many experiences for Mercy volunteers. So glad you had that opportunity to share with them in that spirituality too. I think I know Melissa is going to have to hop off the call soon. So I'm going to ask this question to each of you, and we'll start with Melissa. For those who are watching who are considering volunteering with MVC, what advice would you give to them?
I would definitely start by saying, definitely it's not something that you just jump into. Even I had my hesitations at the beginning, and there was a lot of discernment for me. And it wasn't just personal discernment, it was also talking to my family about it, talking to my friends about it, definitely talking to MVC staff about it. I remember the volunteer coordinator at the time, I was on the phone with her a lot, kind of trying to decide like, what was her experience like? Is this something that's for me? So definitely giving yourself the time to not just hop into it, but kind of process what that would look like for you. And I know like it's not feasible for everybody, but I know it's really important to say like, where do I want to be? Not even 10 years, but like 5 years from now. And where do I want to see personal growth, spiritual growth? And if you don't think that you're ready to go for a job, or I'm ready for that internship, like Mercy Volunteer Corps, is a really good place to figure kind of not just figure out what you want to do, but kind of explore different aspects of service. Because there's a lot of different, there's several different position. So like there's healthcare, there's social work, there's education. So there's different things that you can get into that are not necessarily along your path, but are still there for you to kind of explore and see, is this something that I would want to see myself in? And if it's not, then you know that for sure. And so I really don't think there's a downside to it. But definitely don't just jump into it, and don't just brush it off, because it's a very valuable experience. I don't think I've ever talked to anyone who said, no, this was not something that I should have done. Everybody has said good things about it. No one has regretted it. So definitely do consider it.
Thanks, Melissa. Amanda?
I would say you have to be willing to take a risk. It's okay, like Melissa was just saying, like it's okay if it's not a career that you want to have for the rest of your life, or maybe it's not something that you've had the opportunity to explore before. If it's something that you're feeling called to and something you want to explore, there's a lot of growth that can happen in just a year. I think you'd be amazed at how much you can grow in just a year. But you have to say yes. Like you have to be willing to trust that you're willing to take that step and that you're open to everything that it entails. But say yes if you want to, because it's worth it.
Thanks, Amanda. Pat?
Yeah, I think I would say two things. The first being, I think this was my experience, and I think it's probably the case for a lot of volunteers, is that when volunteers are thinking about a year of service, there are certain people in their life who like really get it and understand like why you would want to do that, and there are other people in your life who might not understand why you know live a year with $100 a month stipend and in a community house and all that. And so I would just say like confide in the people who like you really are inspiring you and who understand those desires for service and faith and simplicity, and want to cultivate those in whether it's the campus minister at your college, or family members or friends, whatever it is. And the second thing I would say is like after you're having conversations with staff, or interviewing with sites, I would just kind of be mindful of, do I feel at peace with this decision, with this route I'm taking? And if not, I would listen to that. But if you are feeling at peace, I would definitely listen to that as well. And I think that's a really good indicator of just discerning what's the right path for you.
Thanks, Pat. And then we did get one question in our chat, which was how your service impacted your perception and experience with social justice issues. So I'll give you a second to think on that one. Yeah. Amanda?
What a good question. When talking to people about my year of service, I often use the phrase, and I know this is a phrase that JBC uses, but I'm often like, my year with Mercy honestly ruined my life. And what I mean by that, is my eyes were just opened so much, and my heart was just broken for the need that there is in this world. And like I can't look away, you know what I mean? Like now that not that I didn't know beforehand, like maybe there was some things I didn't know, but it's not like I wasn't aware, but it wasn't personal to me necessarily before I had done my year of service. I wasn't friends with people who were going through these things. I didn't love them the way that I came to love the people that I worked with last year. And so having that hands-on experience and like being on the ground and seeing it, it just really made it very clear to me that this is something that is a part of my life now. Like I can't ignore it and I have to do something about it. And that's part of the reason why I'm here getting my master's in social work. But it also showed me, to end on a hopeful note, it also showed me that you can do something about it. You know what I mean? Like I had relationship with people and I could see the effect they had on me and the effect I had on them and like the progress that we made. And I could also see that there's a lot of people working to make societal change and to make progress. So yes, that that is how I would answer that question.
Thanks for that, Amanda. Pat?
Yeah, I think so. The population I was serving was a lot of Appalachian, culturally and geographically, and and the specific interactions that I had were a lot of talking about just like people's worries, people's fears, people's faiths, uh, and uh, and some of that had to do with like material circumstances, but a lot of it was just like you know the same sort of things that everybody deals with. Just when I would walk into a patient's room, I wouldn't know anything about them besides their name and their age, and it would just be a total like you know kind of mystery or just person to encounter, and just recognizing that every person who's in that hospital and every person that we meet in our daily lives is just somebody who wants to be loved, wants to be known, um, and really craves relationship with other people. And I think that that holds true in specific social justice work where we're serving the poor and the marginalized of society, but also just wherever we are and wherever we're talking with friends, family, classmates in school. So it's kind of just like I don't know, something that you can live out wherever.
Thanks, Pat. Thank you all so much for tuning in tonight to listen to these wonderful alumni stories. Thanks, Amanda, Pat, and Melissa for taking some time tonight to share with us and encourage us to engage in these meaningful experiences. We are currently accepting applications for Mercy volunteers for service starting in August of 2021. To apply, you go to mercyvolunteers.org/apply. If you have any questions, please feel free to email us. I think as many of our panelists talked about, we are happy to walk with you through the discernment process and application process. So you can email us at contact@mercyvolunteers.